Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 Podcast Live Stream Edition, Monday, February 26, 2024. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi, and with me, as always, is my co-host from Awful Announcing, the associate editor, Ken Fang. Ken, good evening, and hope you had a wonderful week. And how are you?
Good to see you, Stephen. A lot of things happened over the weekend, and we don't have much time, so let's get right to it.
Exactly. Ken is on a tight schedule, and he's kind enough to join us. So let's get to the first big news over the weekend. It has to be, without a doubt, the what happened over the weekend between Duke and Wake Forest. You've been tweeting that game on your Twitter about the tightness of the ball game, and Wake Forest won the game, upsetting Duke. But what happened shortly after is what's causing all kinds of discussions in the sporting world. Duke forward Kyle Filipowski was attacked as the students from Wake Forest stormed, like we've seen many times, Ken. And every time the court storming happens, people discuss about whether or not it should be banned. And as you can see on this Twitter here, it is rolling right here.
Yeah, why don't you make that full screen, Stephen, so we can see a little bit better?
Exactly. Sorry about that. I was going to make that. Okay, so here's Filipowski walking off. Now he gets tripped up, and then it was too quick, but not this guy here. But previously, there was a possibility of Filipowski getting punched in the face as well.
Yeah.
And this actually brought so much controversy. And as you can see here, this guy right here, he got first contact.
So we can see it. I'm going to take that banner off so we can see it better. Go ahead.
Okay. We'll start from the beginning. Here we go. So there was multiple contacts. This guy right here, the first one looked like he took a swing at him. And then this guy here tried to, use his arm to try and knock him down as well before he was finally rescued by the Duke staffers. It was just a chaotic scene. And, Ken, this has been a massive controversy in many situations where students storm onto the court even without the clock shot, the play clock reaching zero, and it has been a massive problems. And I know that some of the cynics would say, well, it's Duke. They always get some sort of a special, preferential treatment, and whenever something involves Duke, it brings up attention. But Ken, what are your thoughts on the what you just saw? And then obviously the hot button topic is, should the court storming be banned moving forward?
Oh, I think it should be. I mean, we've seen this situation happen before. It's dangerous. A couple of weeks ago, we saw it happen in Columbus with Caitlin Clark, and she was knocked down to the ground. Now,
right.
A lot of people have said that both Caitlin Clark and Filipowski extended their arms. But as I made this point before, how are you going? You have 1,000 kids who are storming the court from all directions. You're going to put your arms up to defend yourself. And in addition, you have kids with phones now coming onto the court and want to make a name for themselves and go, hey, I'm going to taunt a basketball player. I'm not saying that's what they do with the case of Caitlin Clark, but it seems like the kids wanted to do this with Wake Forest. And I know Duke Wake Forest is a big rivalry in the ACC, and the Demon Deacons the Duke has been basically the hammer, and Wake Forest has been the nail in this rivalry. But for Wake to make a big win against Duke on Saturday, I don't blame the kids and the crowd for being enthusiastic. You should be. It's a big win. There's no reason, however, to go and storm the court and hit one of their players or try to injure them. and Filipowski sprained his knee in that situation.
Right.
And I know, and I said kind of cynically and jokingly, he said, now it's going to be Duke. The NCAA will ban court storming that night. But I think this has gone on too long, Stephen. It really has. You're in danger. Let the kids get off the court. Let the road team get off the court. And then if you want to have them come on the court and have the fans come on and celebrate, let them do that. But, you're endangering both, not only just the visiting team, but the home team as well. So it's a bad situation. And I really feel that this should have been banned a long time ago. It really should have been, because, we're lucky that we haven't seen major injuries before. But now that with Filipowski, he's going to, I don't know what the situation is, Stephen. I haven't heard about his injury. I know that we heard originally he was sprained knee. I don't know how many games he's going to be out. But to be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen a major injury up until now. I really am surprised. And something like this, for the safety of not just the road team, but of the home team as well. And really, of all the people who are on the court, technicians and the camera people for the TV networks, you've got to make some type of protection for them. And you got to at least give them time to clear the court before you let the kids come onto the floor.
So speaking of ruling, here's the Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark on Outside the Line, talking about the impact of the incidents. Here we go.
Hopefully you don't see it again. Hopefully it was a learning lesson for the entire industry, how to manage this situation more effectively. And if it ends up where, as a collective group, we decide zero tolerance, well, so be it. We'll go in that direction. But I think right now it's about protocol and being prepared for the what if. And that's what I'm stressing throughout our conference weekly.
So, we had a discussion about the a lot of the chatters out there about the future of the NCAA due to the football conferences starting to merge. Pac-12 is no longer on its own, unfortunately, with the exception of Oregon State and Washington State. You have mega conferences merging. You have the SEC and the Big Ten, those two big ones. And the viability of the NCAA has long been questioned. So even if the NCAA does sort of enforce a new rule regards to court storming, once it goes away, the NCAA, which many people more than likely believe that the NCAA will not be able to have the same level of powers that they have right now once the new conferences are starting to, take its shape in football, but also, of course, in similar ways are basketball as well, Ken. And, I think it's kind of dangerous for each conferences to have a separate rules. And, I do believe that this is something that each conferences have to have a ruling that all parties can be satisfied with, because of the non-conference scheduling that takes place usually in October, November, and December before the the conference play starts. So if you have, for example, Big Ten and the ACA having a different type of ruling when it comes to court storming, I do believe that the home team, let's say in this case, Wake Forest not having a protocol, looked like it certainly dropped the ball. And you have to make sure that each conference is like Brett Yormark said that zero tolerance policy, so be it. But then you have different conferences having a different rulings, or they don't have any sort of a protocol when it comes to protecting athletes, not just their own athletes, but also visitors, who aren't unable to leave the court, like what we witnessed with Kyle Filipowski.
Well, let's just say this: we're not at that point yet. The NCAA is still one entity right now. I do believe that as long as Charlie Baker is there, he can hold it together. He's the former mayor of Boston and a guy who is known as for coalition building. Um, I think Baker should be able to do something pretty. Uh, should be able to hold the NCAA together at least as long for at least for a while. But having said that, we all know the NCAA has had their issues. They have the NCAA tournament, and they're going to be doing that. But I do believe that we're going to be hearing something soon. We have to, because you can't allow this to go on. Especially, you're going to have rivalry games coming up in the next couple of weeks, Stephen. Granted, a lot of the tournaments are on neutral courts, so you won't necessarily, and in major arenas, basketball arenas, so you won't see court storming there. And
Right.
thank goodness for that. But I think
It's also a neutral sites too, so you don't want to see
that's what I said. So also, yeah, it's going to be so at least when we have the tournaments coming on, we won't see court storming. But in the next couple of weeks, we have to have some at least security. And you were absolutely right, Stephen. Wake Forest did a very bad job. They knew that this is going to be a big game. This is going to be emotional. It got more the emotions were building more and more as Wake Forest was staying in the game, and then as they got to the point where it was going to be obvious they were going to win the game. Where was security, Stephen? They just let the kids run onto the court, and you have to have a situation. And this was mentioned by Seth Greenberg, the former Virginia Tech coach on ESPN.
Yeah. Right.
He said during a rivalry game that they knew that they were going to beat. They had a good chance to beat Duke. They have protocols. They said, "Look, let's let Duke get off the court before the kids storm." And they had everybody in place. They had security around the court. They let Duke off the court, and then let the kids come on. That should have happened at Wake Forest. You know the situation is going to be it's an emotional game. It's an in-state rival, not only just an in-conference rival. They're down the road. They're in Winston-Salem. Duke is in Durham. So you know that this is going to be an emotional game. And Wake Forest has a good chance of winning this game. You have to have security there, and it's a really bad job by Wake Forest. They dropped the ball. But I'm sure we're going to be seeing, especially with the rivalry games coming up, leading into the major Power 5 conference tournaments, we're going to see better security, Stephen, because there absolutely has to. You can't allow another situation where a basketball player gets hurt and sprains a knee. What's next, though? If this is allowed to happen again, what's next? A broken arm, a broken ankle?
Right.
You can't allow that to happen.
Right. I know Richard Jefferson on your website blasted Jay Billis about issuing citations and stuff like that. But I do believe that we have kind of reached to that point. And I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer that takes away the fun from the students. Yeah, I think the easy protocol would be to make sure that the announcements have been made first and foremost throughout the game. And then with about maybe a few seconds left, there should be like a timeout taken by the officials.
Mm-hmm.
And then that make sure that the announcements go over, because obviously, college basketball is obviously heavily, where students, attend the game. I don't think families and adults with the, awareness wouldn't be doing the same thing, of course. But I do believe that there has to be some sort of a protocol where announcements are made. Students who storm the court before the home and the visitors are able to walk out of the arena and enter the locker room will be a subject of a punishment. Anybody who violates that will be a subject of a lengthy suspension, maybe up to about an entire semester. Also community services. Normally, first-time offenders usually get those type of perks. But I do believe that those has to be in place in order for safety of the students student athletes and the coaching staff and coaching staff and the basketball staffers from getting mugged or getting viciously attacked, with the adrenaline going.
Absolutely, Stephen. I mean, like I said, college basketball, one of the reasons why it's such a great sport is the enthusiasm, the rivalries, the intersectional rivalries. Of course, that's changing, of course, as you mentioned, with all the with the Big Ten becoming a super
realignments and everything.
Yeah, all the stuff. But in the ACC and the Big East and all the smaller conferences, you are seeing those closer rivalries, especially in the ACC and especially in the Big East and the Atlantic 10 a little bit different, but you still have those major rivalries and they mean something.
Yes.
You don't want to, again, like you said, you don't want to cut on the enthusiasm, but also at the same time, you have to have a situation where the players have to be protected. Seth Davis said on CBS is that there's a reason why the players are on the court. They deserve to be there. Said the fans don't deserve to be there. They shouldn't be on the court. And he's been calling for the banning of storming the court for many years now. And I totally agree with him. I used to think, oh, it's fine. Let the kids go on there. But in the last couple of instances where you almost saw Caitlin Clark got knocked down, luckily she only had the wind knocked out of her. But now Filipowski with a sprained knee, you just can't have this any longer. You just can't you can't allow it to continue, especially right before the game ends. You got to let the court be cleared, and then you can have your enthusiasm, or just ban it altogether.
Absolutely. Well, let's see what happens. NCAA certainly has their works cut out, and obviously with the season winding down, nothing can be done at this point, and you just have to pray that there won't be any more court storming that would result in student athletes like Clark and Filipowski getting severely injured. Both are expected to be picked high in WNBA and of course NBA as well. So you don't want a incident like this, destroying their careers moving forward.
Right.
All right. Let's move on to the next one, Ken. Peter King, long time and well-respected NFL columnist, an icon in the industry, dropped his latest and what turned out to be his final Football Morning in America column this morning.
Yeah, here's a guy who has, and I've been a big fan of his. I've read his column, which dates back to going to Sports Illustrated for many years. His Monday morning quarterback. He also, when he moved from Sports Illustrated to NBC, he called it Football Morning in America, because of course NBC has Football Night in America. But he would take so much time to write it. He would write it Sunday overnights, not finishing. I saw him actually write his column on trains on his way back from whatever football game he was covering to his home, whether somewhere in the Northeast. He did a great job at it. Very well researched, well quoted, and of course, you got to know about his love of coffee, what his daughter is doing, his waits through airports. But it all became part of the personality, and whether it was however long it would always be like thousands of words. But they were great reads, and you really couldn't wait to read them. And not only was he a great writer, but he was also on television as well, on NBC, HBO. He was also very open to younger writers, helping them out as well. And in his column today, he also mentioned some of the writers that he hopes will carry on in his footsteps. He said it's his last column. I do believe that he'll probably do some part-time work down the side and on the side for various websites and make appearances. But his traveling and crisscrossing the country, starting from the preseason all the way to the end of the season, is over now. And he should enjoy life, and I certainly hope he gets to enjoy the fruits of his labors. as he gets to spend more time with his family, Stephen.
Yeah, he is mentioning 4 reasons why he's retiring with an asterisk. It's time, number one. Number two, is there all there is? Obviously, he's been a football writer for his entire career. So, it might be interesting for him to maybe, wandering into maybe other sorts of writing, maybe covering a different sport or maybe something else. Number one, it's hard to understand if you're not me. For him to write, like you mentioned, a hard deadline Sunday night, so I wouldn't work until 4 a.m., which obviously he was told to maybe he should pare down his column from more than 10,000 words to 6,000. Excuse me. So, and then obviously, family, citing those reasons. It's a tremendous career for somebody of his magnitude that I grew up watching and listening, without a doubt. And in this day and age where the media has become somewhat polarized, and digital media has had many startups, and a lot of them unfortunately flopping badly. The latest being, of course, the Vice announcing that they're basically shutting down over the weekend. And of course, the LA Times has also had a mass layoffs not too long ago, which also impacted the the sports department as well. So I think people like Peter King are maybe like the last of the dying breed, Ken, and that of course Peter mentioned in his column today that people like Benjamin Solak, who's a very, very young guy at 26 or 7, that is heavily active on Twitter, as one of the people that he thinks that the industry is in good hands and is going to be a huge future star writer as well. But there's only going to be one Peter King, and there will never be another like him. There's going to be imitations. Obviously imitation is a form of flattery, as we all like to say, but Peter King certainly stands on his own and has withstood times at a time when people like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport's of the world have dominated the football media landscape. Peter King will always have his place in the history.
Yeah, 100%, Stephen. I mean, he followed in the footsteps of, as I mentioned, as you see in the banner there, Will McDonough, the late Will McDonough of the Boston Globe. McDonough was the one who wrote the Insider column, and then paved the way for the Insiders to be on television. McDonough first went on the NFL Today, and then NBC NFL Live on NBC. Peter King went on HBO Inside the NFL, and then NBC Sports, and he credited Will McDonough for getting newspaper people to be on television and report and be able to do their insider work, not only just on newspapers, but also on TV. And he paved the way for, as you mentioned, the Adam Schechters, the Chris Mortensens, so many others that have paved their way. Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, all those people who are now almost a fixture and have to be on television as part of the Insiders. Jay Glazer as well. So Peter King has done a tremendous job covering the NFL. I had the pleasure of talking with him on a podcast of mine back in the aughts, actually in the teens, for my own Thanks Bites podcast. Very nice, very accommodating, great sense of humor. We also talked a little bit in that podcast, and unfortunately, it's not. I don't have the archives anymore. But we also talked about his favorite places to go and travel for coffee, and some of the best places that he's ever been to. I said, what are some of the offbeat places you've traveled to that in your travels during the preseason that you just like going to? And he mentioned when the NFL used to have a kind of like 5 teams in Wisconsin. That was actually one time, Stephen, not only just Green Bay, but it was almost like spring training in Florida or the Grapefruit League or the Cactus League in Arizona. There was a group of teams that used to train in the summers in Wisconsin. And he said he loved going there. It made it very easy for him to travel around. He said he loved it. So that was great. It's just, he's a great storyteller. And certainly he will be missed. When he left Sports Illustrated, Albert Breer took over the MMQB site. He left NFL Network to take over for Peter. Does a great job over there. And as you mentioned, we don't know what's going to happen with Sports Illustrated. Hopefully, the MMQB can find a way to survive on its own. But here's Peter, who opted to bring in a whole bunch of writers. He mentioned Emily Kaplan, who now works for ESPN as part of the NHL package. But he helped hone a lot of younger writers and was, as I mentioned, very accommodating to them. And certainly any young writer who wanted to have some advice, he always had time for. And I think that's going to be his great legacy. The people that he talked with and the younger writers he helped to nurture. And I think that's a great thing to see. He never turned down an opportunity to talk to young writers, to talk to schools about honing their craft.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there will be anyone like him. Maybe not just in football, but also in other sports who have have the similar legacy and the impact on the sport itself. Again, with the media landscape changing at a rapid pace, if not deteriorating, you probably won't see somebody like King who are able to mentor the next generation of writers or have a similar type of impact, because maybe they're just worried about losing their jobs, or maybe they become a little fickle because they get worried about getting replaced by younger writers, and of course it's also cheaper to do so as well. So I would have loved to have the opportunity to interview Peter. I actually even sent an email to his Gmail that was listed on the column normally. Unfortunately, I never got the response. And, hopefully when Peter is retired and, like he said, he maybe if he gets bored, hopefully he might look at our email and say, what the hell? And kind enough to come on our little show and discuss his retirement life and so forth. I'm going to play a clip from your website about, NFL Today on ESPN having a wonderful tribute to Peter King.
And Graz, maybe some people don't know this about you. You didn't your career covering the NFL. How did Peter help you as you actually changed your beat from baseball to football?
Yeah. About 15 years ago, after covering Major League Baseball for 14 years and then transitioning to that, look, I was looking for people who could help. And I knew Peter lived in Jersey, probably read my stuff in the Star Ledger when I was covering baseball. So I reached out to him. I mean, when I say, Hannah, this guy was on the phone with me for an hour and a half going through like specific ways to start covering the league, specific people to reach out to. Couldn't have been more generous with his time and advice. Checked in on me as the time went on to see how I was doing throughout the years. Obviously, we've maintained a friendship. And what really strikes me is, I mean, that means an awful lot to me, obviously, in retrospect. But over the years, just knowing that a lot of other people have similar stories about Peter.
That is wonderful. Bill, what about you?
Yeah, Peter King, very early in my career, reached out to me. I got that text saying, "Hey, it's Peter King, call me." And I almost couldn't believe it was his number, like I thought it might have been one of my friends pranking me. But I gave it a call. It was Peter on the other line, and he wanted to touch base with me. He wanted to see what I thought about the MVP race that year. We went through some of the numbers, and I kept thinking, does Peter know he has the right guy on the phone? Was he calling some other Bill he wanted to get in touch with? But it was such a moment for me where I felt like, okay, if Peter King believes I have something to add to the conversation, or I can make him smarter, I really feel like I've accomplished something. And Peter's done that not just for me, but so many young writers out there.
That's just an incredible legacy in and of itself. And I just want to point out that he also mentioned in his final column that one of the things that makes him the most optimistic about the future is the smart women who know the game and cover it. And Mina Kimes, your name was the very first name that he mentioned.
Oh, that's very nice. I would say Peter has introduced me to a lot of young writers who he has advocated for, including a young woman named Kaylin Collar, who comes to mind. And just that is such a striking legacy to leave.
I tell you what, we just all have to pass it on, don't we?
And very nice of Peter to mention Mina Kimes there. He's done, like I said, and as you heard the stories there, very accommodating to writers, very accommodating to younger people coming into the industry. And he's trying to pass on some of the stuff that he learned from the writers who helped him. So I think that he'll continue that legacy, Stephen. Even as retired, he always has the time to talk. And like I said, hopefully when we get closer to the football season and he's maybe driving around the Northeast or not, or maybe just after a vacation, we can get him on the show. I'd love to talk to him.
Well, let's hope so. Obviously you carry a lot more cachet, I should say, certainly having worked in the industry and then having met him in the past. So, congratulations to Peter King, and I want to thank him for the decades of writing wonderful columns on NFL. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that in his final things that he mentioned that he doesn't know yet, or he doesn't know, but he thinks that the Bears are trading their first overall pick, to whoever wants Caleb Williams or something. But it's kind of sent the Bears, fan base to a little bit of a frenzy, obviously, with the discord between those who want to keep Fields versus those who want to draft Caleb Williams and so forth. So, and I don't think Peter King is the kind of person who put out some stuff out there without any firsthand knowledge, or at least something that, he has at least, connections to, or at least he has based on his, decades of relationships and experiences. So,
right.
It'll be very, very interesting to see, with the NFL New Year's coming up on, 2 weeks from today, the official beginning of the free agency and everything. So congratulations to Peter. And, I hope to have the honor to interview him someday. All right. Our final topic today, of course, is the MLS opening weekend. This is a very important year and time for U.S. soccer, but I tell you, Ken, a lot of the problems involving MLS has been, a lot of it is off the field. We had the referees go on strike. They had to go with the replacement referees, believe it or not. I saw that the LA, was it Galaxy versus Inter Miami game?
It was Galaxy, yep.
Yes. The referee that gave one of the players a red card on LA Galaxy was actually literally a like a DJ. I read that somewhere. But the season went on, obviously with the replacement referees, and then before the game, there was a back and forth battle between the United States Soccer Federation versus the MLS over the U.S. Open Cup, which is a massive competition that involves not only MLS but also lower division soccer leagues like USL and so forth. MLS did not want to participate, and that they were because citing fatigue and cramped schedules, which is kind of funny because they made up a Nations Cup involving the battle over a cup with the Liga MX with the teams in Mexico, which made it even more the schedule as tighter than it is. So they were actually either try to withdraw or send reserve teams, the MLS Next Pro teams, basically the team made up of youngsters, which obviously was not well received. At the time, I believe U.S. Soccer Federation, shot down the MLS's threat, but now this problem obviously has been overshadowing the league itself. Now there is actually a compromise of sending only 8 teams into this long, historical cup competition, which is kind of like a FA Cup with the English Premier League, but obviously it's kind of weird to compare. In comparison, oranges to apples, but just for the context of what the USOC is and has meant to the U.S. soccer,
right? And it's as you mentioned, it's like MLS against the lower divisions. It's like you mentioned, similar to what the FA Cup with the English Premier League, the Championship League, and all the other lower divisions, and also what Germany does with the DFB Pokal Cup. With the Bundesliga and other second division. And I think it's something that opens up soccer. I mean, granted, is a USL team going to defeat an MLS team? Most likely not, but still, when you get those upsets, Stephen, and they have happened in the US Open Cup, it's a great thing. I mean,
it's a great competition, yes.
It also helped FC Cincinnati move from USL into MLS because they realized they could play against that competition, and they got brought in from the Cincinnati got brought in from USL into MLS. I think we should. MLS is being short-sighted here. And I know they have their Liga MX, and they also have the CONCACAF Champions League and Champions Cup, which is similar to what they have, of course, the UEFA Champions League, but still. How do your competition get better? How does U.S. soccer get better? By having this type of competition. Same thing with the FA Cup. Same thing with Coppa Italia. Same thing as we've seen in Coupe de France. You want to have these type of competitions, and they only help promote your game. And Don Garber, I don't understand him at all. He's the commissioner of MLS. He's not one of my favorite people at all.
No, me neither.
He's got to realize he can't be short-sighted here. He's got to look at he can't be cutting his nose despite his face. He's got to come up with he's got to be a little bit better with this, Stephen. And you're going to play a video. Go right ahead.
Yeah, this is ESPN FC's Sebastian Salazar. This was back in late December of last year about the withdrawing their first team from the U.S. Open Cup, and this was his review.
For years and years, Herc, the U.S. Soccer Federation did Major League Soccer's bidding, often at the expense of everybody else in American soccer. And the proof of that is the dozens of leagues, men and women, the hundreds of clubs, men and women, including Rio Grande Valley, who today is out of business, that have gone out of business since MLS came into business in 1996. And for all that time, U.S. Soccer sat by and did nothing. And the why behind that is very obvious, Herc, and you know it well. It's because through a marketing contract that not a lot of people know about, not a lot of people talked about, U.S. Soccer was getting its bills paid, in effect, by Major League Soccer. So, of course, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. Well, that contract ended a couple years ago. So now this federation, which for a long time was only independent in theory and not in practice, is now really, truly independent and needs to take a stand. And for me, the stand is clear. You cannot let MLS Next Pro teams into this tournament. And it's time for U.S. Soccer to seriously consider stripping MLS of its Division I status. You cannot be a Division I league, Herc, if you don't want to compete. And that's the bottom line with Major League Soccer. They don't want to compete. They're scared of competition. It's why they're pulling out of the Open Cup. And it's why anytime you hear about promotion relegation or anytime anybody brings up an open system, MLS folks run for the hills. They're scared of competition because they don't want to be exposed.
Yeah, he said it, eloquently. A lot of implications are involved in this because, quite frankly, I think MLS agree with Salazar that they're scared of competition. Number one, And then with Lionel Messi entering the league last summer, with the tickets sales skyrocketing, and the money and the implications that they get from Gates, and also the contract with the Apple TV, which obviously you're familiar with the Apple, having worked with the company before on a retail side, Ken. They don't want to give up the money, and it's kind of weird that. I do want that the USSF to grow a pair, kindly put it, and then, just, call their bluff, remove the D1 status, which obviously, if you don't have a D1 status as a club, you're not allowed to compete in the CONCACAF or FIFA sanctioned tournaments. And that's even going to be much more, even severe in terms of the the reputation and the embarrassment. So I just feel that USSF missed out on the opportunity to enforce being a true independent federation. Not that they're the ones that they're actually working underneath the MLS. Because that's the kind of impression that many people feel that they're not truly independent, that they're actually working on behalf of the MLS and so forth. Ken.
Right, and a very good point there is the fact that MLS won't even consider relegation. They will not be considered a top flight league until they at least consider that. One of the reasons why we see that in Europe and why they're top flight is because of relegation and promotion, and you get that excitement, especially those on the championship level in England trying to get promotion. You also see it in the Bundesliga. You also see it in La Liga as well. You get those teams trying to fight to get to top flight leagues and get more money, and then you get relegation of the bottom three teams into the lower league. I think that's what has to happen here for MLS, but they don't want to do it. And they don't adhere to a European soccer schedule. So again, that this ridiculous February to November schedule just doesn't fly. One of the reasons why they're not considered a really top flight league. And until they do that, Stephen, until they do open it up to do the US Open Cup, until they consider relegation, until they adjust their schedule to similar to what we see in the Europe leagues around the world, in Asia and in Europe, MLS is not going to be considered a top flight soccer league, despite the fact that Messi is there, despite the fact they're getting better players, until they adjust their whole type of thinking. And Don Garber decides to say, "Hey, look, let's join the rest of the world." MLS is still going to be considered a second tier league.
Absolutely, and more importantly, do the fans care enough about MLS if it loses a D1 status, to be honest? Because off the field, we mentioned the referee lockout, strike. Obviously, it's going to hurt the quality of the game itself. And I'm posting an article on MLS banning Philadelphia Union's Kai Wagner made a racial slur towards I believe, Real Salt Lake's. No, it's not. I'm sorry, New England Revolution's Bobby Wood, who is a German American. I'm assuming, obviously, said something that is considered racial towards Asians around the 85th minute following a foul committed by New England's Giacomo Vrioli on Philadelphia's Nathan Harrell. Now, because the season had already ended, the suspension was supposed to carry over into the first match of the next season. Well, they just played their first game, and Wagner was actually allowed to, not serve any suspension and actually play the game. So this makes absolutely no sense. And then, as somebody who lived in the Kansas City area, we had a problem where Sporting KC hired a controversial sporting director named Gavin Wilkinson, who, by the way, was implicated in the multiple investigation when he was a general manager and president with the Portland Timbers and the NASL's Florence, which is a women's soccer league, involving the multiple alleged sexual harassment and ignoring the the allegations, or at least help protected the former coach Paul Riley here. And then KC announced his hiring of the similar role with the team, but the backlash was severe enough that both organizations, both KC and Wilkinson, was parted ways shortly after he was fired. So, the U.S. Soccer Federation has been plagued with, U.S. soccer as a whole, I should say, has been plagued with, racism, and then also misogyny, because we know that the long battle involving U.S. women's soccer over fair play, which was something that the former, Federation President Sunil Gulati had to settle before he was eventually forced out of there. So it has been riddled with, again, racism and sexism. And it's just that, the U.S. soccer as a whole is kind of heading in a wrong path, and they just can't seem to fix itself. Of course, this is the same federation that hired Greg Berhalter, and he was mired in a controversy because of the Gio Reyna, and his parents actually, well, not Gio, of course. We went extensively on this a couple of years ago, shortly after the World Cup in Qatar, about Reyna's trying to blackmail Berhalter over domestic violence involving then his girlfriend, now his wife, and the U.S. still brought him back despite the the allegations, and obviously certainly not a good look on the entire USA soccer landscape, Ken. And that with the Copa America coming up in the summer of this year, and then you have the World Cup coming up in 2 years time. The U.S. soccer has and then MLS and the federation, and then also both men's and women certainly have their works cut out, because all these negative news that I think we can agree, Ken, that it's somewhat self-inflicted, and just overshadowing what is supposed to be a golden time in U.S. soccer moving forward. Ken, I think you might have muted yourself. I apologize there.
Sorry about that. I did mute myself. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. The fact is that U.S. soccer has had all these type of problems. The men's side, especially, the women's winning masked a lot of problems. Winning helps you, certainly, is an antidote for any type of problems. Now that we're seeing some problems with the women's side coming up and brewing, we may not be able to see the women's win the World Cup as the level of play has gotten better on the women's side around the world.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to wait and see. I mean, the issues with MLS, the issues with the U.S. Soccer Federation, the issues with the fact that things just don't seem to be going smoothly with U.S. soccer. And we have to wait and see how they handle these things going into the World Cup in a couple of years, Stephen. In a few years, we're going to have to wait and see. It's all going to be, it's something that you and I will always be looking forward to and looking to cover on this show, as we always have. And we always bring them to light. And if it's bad behavior, we'll always make sure that we call it out.
Absolutely. And the lack of leadership in every facets of life, we see that all the time now in business and politics, of course, and in sports. Don Garber, Sidney Pardo Cone, and JT Baston, the leaders of the U.S. soccer and the MLS, they have to find ways to improve the product and the game, as well as the perception. If they don't have the same level of desire to fix what's ailing the soccer scenes, why should the fans care? And if the fans start to leave in droves, would anybody care about MLS? That's going to be a huge problem. I don't think not many people, with all the respect, will probably pay much attention to the MLS. And more importantly, with the Apple TV you always have to worry about the number of subscribers. And Apple is obviously not running a charitable business. This is a money-making business. They have to have the certain number of subscribers. I know Apple TV president came out and said they want to see more stars being signed by the MLS. So there is obviously some sort of a Apple TV side making some a request of sorts. Will MLS listen and do something about it? We'll find out. We'll find out if if it falls on deaf ears, or if MLS will start doing something about the the roster restrictions and salary caps, etc. moving forward. Well, Ken, I know you have to go, but thank you very much once again for coming on to the show and talk a lot about. We certainly have a lot to talk about, obviously, with the Super Bowl officially over, not 2 weeks ago or so. But, the sport keeps on moving, obviously with the spring training, we have baseball to talk about eventually. And hopefully we'll talk about it with, guests and look into this upcoming season down the road as well. So please make sure to follow us on Twitter and also our YouTube channel as well. We look forward to having you on next Monday, on the Double A Team live stream. By the way, tomorrow night, I'm having Alexa Jade and from Windy City Gridiron's SB Nation page, Lester Fang, the editor, to discuss about the Chicago Bears offseason. So please make sure to join us, and I'll put it on the Twitter timeline to promote the show as well. For Ken Fang, I am Stephen Negishi. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Double A Team podcast live stream. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night. We'll see you next week.